Imagine driving down a dark, curving road in the middle of the night, your boyfriend's in the passenger seat, his friend's in the back, and suddenly the gas pedal hits the floor 100% throttle, there's no brakes, no swerving, just a straight, terrifying acceleration directly into a solid brick wall at 100 miles per hour. These are the final moments of Davion and Dom's life as Mackenzie was behind the wheel and she just went around the corner, and next thing you know, she just slammed right into a brick wall. This is the aftermath of that deadly car crash that left two young men dead. These are the two men who tragically lost their lives that morning. And then the driver, Mackenzie, she was left critically injured. She had to go to the hospital where she was eventually released, and she was later arrested and is currently serving prison time for this wreck. So there has been a lot that has came out. We're going to talk about the documentary. We're going to talk about some stuff that wasn't shown in the documentary. We're going to go over the police reports. And we're going to see how Mackenzie has been since she's been in prison. She's been getting in trouble left and right since she's been behind bars. So we're going to get into all that. So this is going to be the full story of 17-year-old Mackenzie Shirella. Mackenzie was 17 years old at the time, back in 2022, when she was the driver of this horrific car crash that ended up taking the lives of these two young men in a Cleveland suburb. And at the time, people thought it was just devastating teen driving tragedy. But once detectives uncovered the car's black box and looked into it, they uncovered a bone-chilling reality. So we have 20-year-old Dominic. He was known as Dom to all his friends. He was an aspiring musician. He was a creative soul who's in the middle of launching his own clothing line, and he was also Mackenzie's boyfriend at the time. And then we have 19-year-old Davion, and Davion was a star high school football player. He was a blowout brother who had just graduated, and he was getting ready to start barber school. That night, Mackenzie, Dom, and Davion had been out at a gathering, and according to the police reports, they actually went to two gatherings that night. They went to this party from like 10:30 to 11:30. They left there, and then they went to another house where they were at until about 5:30 in the morning. So they were at this party, and then Mackenzie decided to leave with them, and she was driving her Toyota Camry, and she was driving them home through an empty industrial business park. The next thing you know, the car wrecked into a brick wall. At around 5:30 a.m., a passerby spotted the wreckage, and the Camry had slammed head-on into a brick building, and the impact was so severe that the car was completely unrecognizable. And when the first responders first arrived, it was a really grim scene. They had Dom and Davion immediately pronounced dead upon arrival at the scene, and Mackenzie was still in the car. She was breathing and she was trapped, but she ended up getting her life saved by her airbags in her car, and they pulled her out of the car. She was rushed to the ER in critical condition. When she woke up, she tried to act like she had no memory of what happened. During Mackenzie's trial, because she was later arrested, we're going to get to that eventually, but the chief medical examiner testified that Mackenzie and Dominic and Davion, they all had marijuana in their systems at the time of their crash, and the hospital ended up testing Mackenzie for alcohol, and they claimed that she was not under the influence of alcohol when the wreck occurred. And then they ended up searching the car, where they found some contraband. They found 8.1 grams of psychedelic mushrooms. They found a bag of marijuana, a digital scale, and a bong. And they ended up trying to argue that Mackenzie ended up getting in this wreck because she was suffering from this medical condition called POTS, and they act like she somehow just suddenly was suffering from this medical condition and that caused her to wreck, and she can't remember anything what happened because of that. Shout out to Annie Elise on YouTube. She spilled some pretty big tea from the police report.
Tell you the truth about Mackenzie Shirella, and I've got the receipts to back it all up. Mackenzie's own mother at the hospital advised Mackenzie's friends not to cooperate with the police. Oh, also, Netflix said that THC is the only thing that was found in her system. That's because a physician canceled the blood order from right after the crash. No testing was conducted. It's all here in the police report. The first blood sample wasn't collected until 3 or 4 days later. Then it was tested, and that's why the only thing that showed was THC. I first covered this case years ago before it even went to the trial. I also participated in a documentary where I got my hands on all sorts of documents, things that didn't even come into the trial, and a lot of stuff post-trial. Most people know that she and Dom had a very toxic relationship. There were also multiple occasions where she threatened to take her own life. But that night was different. Not only did they go to the first party that night around 10:15, where
in the documentary, I'm pretty sure they made it sound like they just went to one party, but she says they went to 2 different parties, and Mackenzie was asking people for acid at the first party.
Mackenzie was asking for acid, but they continued to then go to the after party and go to multiple different houses where they continued to drink, do substances, things like that. They arrived at Paul's house around 11:40, then, as we know, left around 5:30. But here's what many people aren't talking about, or I should say focusing on. Around 2 to 3 a.m., Paul woke up and he saw that Mackenzie was asleep. At some point, she woke up after that. Around that same time, between 2:40 a.m. and 3:30 a.m., before Mackenzie woke up, Dom was sending text messages to his brother, sister, parents, friends saying, "I love you," what some, in hindsight, signaled that there was something wrong.
You know, that makes sense because I remember his dad saying that he texted him at I can't remember, it was either 3 or 5 in the morning that he loved him. And that's just weird to do that randomly out of nowhere. Did you know you were already in trouble at that point?
And that he knew that there was something going on. Or conversely, that he was spiraling because of the substances and that he was thinking of self-harm. He also tried to FaceTime Blair at 2:41 a.m., but Blair was asleep. Now, as I said, already in the evening, there was talk and potential use of acid, alcohol, other drugs, and 6.91 grams of shrooms that were found. Now, what's frustrating is when Mackenzie got to the hospital, there were samples taken from the physician. No tox report, but samples were taken. Then it was canceled by the physician. So the ER, who had blood samples, ended up discarding those samples. First blood sample wasn't collected until 3 or 4 days later. Then it was tested, and that's why the only thing that showed was THC. So there's no way to really prove what, in fact, she and they were or were not taking that evening. But what we do know from a lot of friends' testimony, both pre-trial and post-trial, is that Mackenzie was a reckless driver, that she would often start fights while she was driving, and, as I said earlier, that she would threaten to take her own life.
Man, that's some tea. She spilled a lot of tea in that video right there. But yeah, most drugs outside of marijuana will only stay in your system for 3 or 4 days. So if they waited 4 days to do the blood test, the drugs could already been out of her system by then. Detectives ended up pulling Mackenzie's Camry's event data recorder, which they also call the black box. And this is what completely destroyed Mackenzie's defense because they're trying to blame it on a medical condition like POTS. I guess one of the side effects that you can get from POTS is you can get really lightheaded and you can faint. And she claims that she just simply blacked out at the wheel. But the prosecution dropped a bomb in court and they showed the Camry's event data recorder, which showed that for 5 seconds before the crash, she was at 100% full throttle and she did 0 braking at all. So she literally just put the pedal to the metal and she didn't let up or stop at all up until they crashed into that brick wall. And to me, that tells me that was deliberate because literally we saw the road that she was going around before the crash where she was kind of driving slow. She was driving very controlled and it was like a S-curve road that she had to drive down. She was going around all the curves right. She was staying in between the lines. She was using her blinker. Everything that she was doing while she was driving was very controlled, and then suddenly you go 100 miles per hour into a wall. And I guess a few times before she ended up hitting the wall, this steering wheel ended up turning, which takes out her defense that she was blacked out, because if you were blacked out, then how was the steering wheel getting turned? And a lot of people think that was either Davion or Dom, likely Dom, trying to grab the steering wheel and save his life last minute. But I mean, at that point, going that kind of speed, it's only a matter of time even if you do turn the wheel before a disaster happens. The data showed that for the final 5 seconds before impact, the accelerator pedal was pushed all the way to the floor, 100% throttle reading, and that requires sustained heavy physical pressure which is something somebody unconscious can't physically do. And like I said, the leading road to the brick wall wasn't a straight line. It was like an curve. So she really had to be focused and fully aware to drive those curves. She would have just went straight or kind of curved off as she was passed out at the time. So the prosecution believed that this was Mackenzie trying to unalive her boyfriend, and she was also trying to take her own life in the process. And some of her friends, as a other blogger mentioned, had came out and revealed that Mackenzie had said multiple times that she wanted to take her own life. She decided she wanted to do a trial, but she could decide if she wanted to do it with a judge deciding her fate or a jury deciding her fate. And I think she probably thought, maybe I can manipulate one person easier compared to trying to manipulate 12 people. So she decided to do a judge trial.
There's a very good likelihood, Mackenzie, that you will spend the rest of your life in prison. That won't be up to me. That will be up to the parole board, and that will be up to you to a great extent. I understand that the pain in this room wants me to impose the harshest sentence. But I don't believe that would be the appropriate sentence, because I do believe that Mackenzie will not be out in 15 years. So she's sentenced on count 2, the murder of Davion Flanagan, 15 years to life. She's sentenced on count 1, the murder of Dominic Russo, 15 years to life, to be served concurrent to each other with credit for time served.
She was looking at 15 years before the possibility of parole, or 30 years, and the judge gave her 15 years. I don't agree with that decision. I feel like she should have got 30 years because she willingly took 2 lives, and their families will never be able to see their sons ever again. And the judge may be right when she said she believes that Mackenzie may never get out of prison, because Mackenzie cannot stay out of trouble from behind bars. So big shout out to Shrilla the Killer on YouTube. They got a lot of tea on Mackenzie. Like, their whole channel is dedicated to that. So I definitely recommend you check them out if you want to look more into this case. But these are all the times that Mackenzie has gotten in trouble since she's been behind bars, just as of recently. It sounds like she may have herself a girlfriend in there, because in August of 2025, she got in trouble for consensual sexual conduct. Then she got in trouble for being at a place, so she probably wasn't in her bed or her cell, somewhere she wasn't supposed to be. She got in trouble in July of last year for encouraging or creating a disturbance and violating the rules. Then she got in trouble a week before that for being at a place. Then she got in trouble in May of last year for possession of contraband, including alter. So she altered something and got in trouble for it. So I'm assuming maybe she tried to make some kind of sharp object into a shank to protect herself while she's in prison. Or maybe she tried like making a tattoo gun or something she's not supposed to have. Then she got in trouble for sexual harassment in April of last year. And look, these are literally within weeks of each other. It seems like the girl last year couldn't even go like a few weeks to a month without getting in trouble from April to August. So then she got in trouble for sexual harassment, disturbance of a direct order, and possession of contraband, including altered. And then she got in trouble for violating a visitation, including video visits. So I'm assuming maybe she like showed something she wasn't supposed to show during her video visit, like, you know, maybe she flashed the camera or something. I don't know. That's just what I'm assuming from what I've heard of similar violations with other people. She got in trouble for misuse of an authorized medication. So she was using and abusing some medicine in there. She got in trouble for possession of contraband, including altered. Then in December 2024, she got in trouble for being at a place and disturbance of a direct order. And then in November 2024, 2 different times within a 2-week period, she got in trouble for being at a place. Then earlier that month in November, she got in trouble for disturbance of a direct order, destruction, alteration, or misuse of property. Then she got some contraband charges. There's 3 contraband charges in total. Then she got in trouble for possession of property of another incarcerated person. And then she got in trouble for stealing or embezzlement of property. So she's stealing from people. She's getting caught with stuff she's not supposed to have. She's getting in trouble for doing things in video visits she's not supposed to do. And if any judge or probation officer looks at that and they have to make a decision, do I think this person's ready for freedom? Do I feel like they've changed? I feel like anybody could look at that and be like, nope, they need to lock her up for a few more years, because obviously if she can't follow the rules from behind bars, then who thinks she's going to get out and walk a straight and narrow line? Her parents seem to think she is. Her parents are the biggest enablers out there. They interviewed her parents during this documentary, and they had nothing wrong to say about their daughter. They're like, oh, our daughter's this perfect little princess. She never got in trouble. To me, either you're defending her that just because that's your daughter, and I understand like defending her and trying to co-sign her lies, like, oh, she's innocent because you want your daughter to be out here free and around you guys. I get that, but they also need to hold their daughter somewhat accountable and be like, you know what, yeah, maybe she didn't do everything perfect. Maybe she wasn't this perfect little angel. And you know what that tells me? If they're really convinced that she was this perfect little angel, then that tells me they weren't around her enough to know the true Mackenzie, because there has been so many people who came out in the police reports and on social media who said they were bullied for Mackenzie. And I think they even touched on that a little bit in the documentary as well. A lot of people were bullied. I guess Mackenzie was the mean girl who kind of just looked down on everyone and thought she was better than everybody. And a lot of people didn't like her because of that. I feel like her parents were out of touch with the reality of who their daughter Mackenzie really was. And I think they just kind of believed everything that she told them, and they kind of give off like those parents that kind of just take a step back and allow their own child to make their own mistakes. You know, there's helicopter parents, and then there's the opposite of that. I think like free range parenting, and that's what their parents, Mackenzie's parents, were giving me. And I didn't like how at the end the mom went up to the judge after the judge found her guilty on all 12 counts, and the judge was about to sentence her, and the mom was like, please give my daughter grace, please, my daughter is such an angel. And all she could do was talk about her daughter. And I know your daughter is number one to you, but you should be thinking about those victims. Anybody with any common sense, like, I understand getting flustered in a courtroom full of people, especially when everything's being televised. But at the same time, that just goes to show me where your heart really is. And your heart is not with the victims like it should be. Because the first thing coming out of your mouth should be you begging for forgiveness from the victims. And I don't even believe that Mackenzie's really sorry for what she did. Because when she stood up, she's like, yeah, thank you for everyone who stood by me. And I'm sorry for the victims. Like, she just kept it short and sweet. And I'm like, okay, you're just doing the bare minimum just because you want to look good. But I feel like if you really had empathy and felt bad for the situation, then you wouldn't want to spill your whole heart out. But there's nothing else for you to say because you felt nothing else about the situation, which is heartbreaking. To me, it just gives off that Mackenzie's this self-centered brat. And it just seems like her parents have enabled her behavior for too long. And to me, with the way Mackenzie was acting, it's like you're not sorry for what happened. You're just sorry because you got caught. And it seems like all the sadness you have is just you upset over the fact that you have to spend the rest of your life in prison. It's all so self-centered, it's coming across when it comes to Mackenzie. And then they interviewed Mackenzie for this documentary, and oh my god, like, it's not even really worth mentioning because the girl really didn't add anything to the documentary. It just goes to show to me that she still has zero remorse about the situation. She tried to say, yeah, I'm sorry for the victims' families, I just want to make sure I get that across, but I also don't want to say too much. And she had to like sit there and take a break and ask her lawyer, yeah, is that all I'm supposed to say? Like, you could tell this was a PR statement that was concocted by her lawyer. Like, I want to know how you genuinely feel. I don't want no ChatGPT lawyer response coming from your lawyer about what you think is going to make you look best in this documentary. Everything just seemed not genuine and so concocted in all her responses, and she was not taking accountability for anything. She just wanted to blame it on this medical condition. And shout out to the producer who was interviewing her, because he wasn't putting up with her BS. He's like, well, if you say it's a medical condition, then why was your foot on the pedal the whole time? And she's like, I don't know. I said I can't remember. So how am I supposed to explain something if I can't remember? And they're like, well, how did you go around the curvy road and all of that? And she just kept playing, I don't remember. And they're like, well, it's pretty convenient you don't remember. And she's like, I don't know what to tell you. And she just kind of acted like a little snob, in my opinion. And I think she was just trying to make herself sound as good as possible, hoping that it'll help her get out when she does come up for parole eventually. And then she pretty much just said that she was in love with Dom, she feels bad, and she was really good friends with the guy that was in the car who tragically lost his life too. And yeah, she just really didn't add a lot to the conversation, except just showing how little accountability she's willing to take in this situation. And to me, it just goes to show, like, you're not ready to change, because if you're not willing to at least admit that, even when you've been found guilty on all these charges and everyone can clearly see through all the BS, if you're still not willing to admit that, that just goes to show me that you're just a habitual liar. And even her parents are still like, yeah, she may have been found guilty, but we still think she's innocent, and they're convinced that she's gonna get her, I guess, sentence overturned. She tried to appeal it once, that didn't work. And I mean, that should tell you something if you are her parents. But again, they're just in complete denial, because the little angel can do no wrong. But the biggest victims in all this is Dom and Davion, who tragically lost their lives. Like, they're just getting their lives started, and it was all taken away from them from one selfish decision from Mackenzie. Davion was about to go to school to be a barber, so his family, after he passed, they decided to start this Davion Memorial Scholarship Fund, where they're trying to raise up to $150,000 to send some people to barber school. Since they weren't able to have Davion go to barber school, they want to make sure someone else is able to chase that dream. And so far, they've raised over $66,000. It says contributions will be used to create a memorial barber school scholarship fund in memory and honor of Davion Flanagan. Davion was a lifelong gifted athlete. He loved sports, and he had a talent and passion for cutting hair. He used to cut all his friends' hair, and he decided that he was going to go to the 2023 barber program in Cleveland, Ohio. Mackenzie's boyfriend Dom was into crypto trading. He was very smart and passionate about trying to make his own business. And both Dom and Davion's parents said they were definitely going big places, but sadly that was cut short from one bad decision for Mackenzie. But that is it for this video, guys. And yeah, Mackenzie even had the nerve to comment on Dom's obituary, saying, oh yeah, you had so much life ahead of you. I'm so sorry. I can't believe this happened. But the only reason that his life got stopped was because of you. Like, I get Mackenzie was mourning at the time, but if that was Mackenzie after that happened, you should have just, like, buried your hand in the sand somewhere and just went MIA, instead of, like, trying to act like the victim when these two guys are the only victims in this at the end of the day. But that's it for this video, guys. Let me know what you guys think about this documentary in the comments below, and thank you so much for watching.